I don't I love to say I told you so. And while Sam Darnold has not become the better player than Lamar Jackson, what I was getting to with Lamar Jackson wasn't anything about being a hater, wasn't anything about wanting him to switch positions. Like that's political nonsense crap that has leaked into football, right? Where it's either all or nothing. It's important to realize that Lamar Jackson was a first-round pick. Okay, so everybody missed on him, sort of. I mean, the Ravens did take Hayden Hurst before they took him, didn't they? They took a tight end before, so they missed on him per se. But it wasn't necessarily missing. It was an evaluation over his talent, his potential, his ceiling, his floor. Now, I don't think anyone in the Ravens organization thought he'd be an MVP in his first year starting as a quarterback in the NFL. I sure as hell didn't. And for that, I would say I was wrong. But the ceiling of Lamar Jackson and his struggles throwing a football could not be any more evident than what we saw yesterday. He completed 44% of his balls. He threw 2 touchdown passes, but he had 5 turnovers. A couple of fumbles, a couple of interceptions. In his career losses, 11 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, 102 yards passing per game. I said 12 turnovers, okay, 12. The turnovers are an issue. Now, look, if you've studied option football, and any of you who remember Oklahoma or Nebraska when they were big option teams, one of the biggest issues that those teams would have is ball security. You combine that by the fact that Lamar Jackson is just not great when you go 5 wide and you want to throw outside the numbers. And here's the other I told you so moment. When Tim Tebow was winning games in Denver, the first guy to say, I want out, was Eddie Royal. Okay, Eddie Royal was one of the favorite wide receivers of the previous quarterback, and it wasn't that he didn't like winning. It was that in order to make money in the NFL, as a wide receiver, your contract is usually based upon the number of targets, the number of receptions, as well as some of the little things you do like blocking and, and being able to make other plays for your team. You just don't get the opportunities in the way in which they're playing. I mean, Hollywood Brown took to Twitter and pointed out that he's not being used as much as he'd like to be used. So you have the turnovers, which are a problem with option football. You have Lamar struggling to complete passes when it's made for passing downs. You have wide receivers who get a little bit antsy over not getting the number of targets. And then, by the way, it should be pointed out, it's really, really to point out that this is the same thing that happened to Greg Roman in San Francisco with Colin Kaepernick. Like literally the exact same thing. Colin Kaepernick replaced Alex Smith mid-year. Do you guys remember that? Alex Smith had a perfect game against the Arizona Cardinals. He got a concussion the next game. Colin Kaepernick replaced him. The next year, Colin Kaepernick was an MVP candidate. And they were running a very similar offense with the exact same offensive coordinator. And the third year, everyone saw it. Everyone figured it out. They tried to make Colin Kaepernick. They knew he wasn't good rolling to his left. He only rolled right. He had small hands. He turned the ball over. He couldn't change arm angles, et cetera, et cetera. They were 8-8 that year, and Greg Roman left and went to the Buffalo Bills. Do you guys remember all this? This has all happened before. Now, the difference is that I believe the Baltimore Ravens are a better organization. Okay? It's John, not Jim Harbaugh. And they're constructed better in terms of running. They ran the hell out of the football, over 250 yards rushing yesterday. Their defense is really good. Like, this is a good football team, but it's limited by their quarterback because he can only really play one way, which is not the worst thing in the world. This is why people don't play this way, is because, and the one thing that hasn't happened is the thing that I feared the most, which is getting hurt, which thankfully hasn't happened. But he did get hit and hit hard several times. So I'm not telling you Lamar Jackson stinks. Please don't tell any of your buddies that. Okay? What I'm saying is this style not only has a ceiling, it has a shelf life. And they're bumping up into the ceiling, and they're getting closer to the born-on date, the shelf life of, hey, we may need to figure this thing out. And by the way, that was Lamar Jackson's first loss when leading as a starter. He's never won a game when trailing at the half, and now he's 22-1 when leading. Like the whole thing before was he couldn't bring him from behind. No, now the thing is he can't maintain a lead because eventually teams, especially in their division, are going to figure it out. So that's going to be the challenge for the Ravens. How do they evolve? How do they, while getting better, while staying true to what Lamar Jackson does? Can he continue to improve as a passer? And look, he's not the only one whose ceiling has been exposed, right? What we find out about Josh Allen, right? Start of the year, he was an MVP candidate. Now saying like, you know what, Josh Allen, kind of inaccurate. Like, yeah, that's like you have these scouts are paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to solely evaluate individual positions. And while they miss some, they don't completely swing and miss on most of these guys. Josh Allen, spectacular talent, just not crazy accurate. Lamar Jackson, freak athleticism, incredible arm, lacks the accuracy and the ability to make pinpoint throws outside of the numbers, and a guy who still has a tendency, kind of like Josh Allen, when the pressure comes to drop his head and think about running, and that's a really hard way to live. So were scouts wrong? Yeah, sort of. But what you're seeing is the ceiling and the shelf life both being exposed for this style. And the Baltimore Ravens and the weaknesses are, we know it. You get to 3rd and long, he's got to throw it. That's not great. You start turning the football over. That's the way in which they lose games. That's how all option teams have fallen apart. Do they run the traditional wishbone option? No. But for the NFL, this is as close to the option as you're going to get. There's this sense that we don't read enough anymore. Like, well, newspapers and magazines. Like, I read a lot more than I used to. My way of finding what I want to read is different. That's what really my intent on using like Twitter is for. It's like finding articles, people I like and respect. But so maybe I read too much, but I've seen so many people point out like, well, the Packers considered Antonio Brown before he selected the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And they should, by Tuesday's trade deadline, should think about acquiring maybe Amari Cooper or going out and getting and I'm not disputing that would help them, but maybe I must be watching a completely different football team play. The Green Bay Packers this year are 22nd overall in defense, 20th in points allowed per game, 28th in the red zone. They're tied for last with takeaways. Look, is there a certain luck that goes to taking the football away? A little bit, but there's an aggressive nature to it that benefits people. You look at the NFL defensive rankings, and it's pretty alarming. It's pretty alarming exactly what's taking place because you can't go by gross stats. You got to go by red zone is really important and takeaways is important. And frankly, 3rd downs are really important. What do you do on 3rd down? And the Packers are bad in all of these categories. And because of it, it puts their offense at a prohibitive disadvantage. They've only lost 2 games in the year, so I'm not telling you to cancel the season, but we're kind of lost in terms of what we think of a football team and what they need to add. I don't know how many people need to tell me that they need to go add a wide receiver. I'm like, for what? For what? Right? Who's the best team in the league? Steelers? Guess who has the number 1 ranked defense in the league? That would be the Steelers. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, a lot of people are saying they're now the best team in the NFC. Guess who has the second best defensive team in the league? They're the 4th best at creating pressure. They're the best in pass coverage. Opponents have an 82.9 quarterback rating against their defense against the Buccaneers. Like the Buccaneers are good, not just because their offense, mostly because their defense. Hell, the Bears were in a game with the Saints yesterday. Again, same exact thing. Rob Domofsky is a Packers insider. The Packers D has allowed the last 2 instances of a player recording at least 200 yards and 4 touchdowns in a game. Dalvin Cook on Sunday and Raheem Mostert in the NFC Championship game. Everybody seems to know that Kubiak / Shanahan style running game gives them fits. But hey, let's go out a wide receiver. Or hey, let's point out that Jordan Love didn't dress. Should they maybe have selected somebody other than Jordan Love? Maybe. Should it have been a wide receiver? Don't think so. Why? Because you don't know. Just because it's hard for you to judge if a guy's any good if he doesn't play one of those positions doesn't affect the rest of us. They need help on their interior line. I mean, the Packers are just, man, you just look at these rankings. You're like, yay. You know, it's not about anything other than modern day defensive rankings. Right? Can you get turnovers? And it's no. Can you stop on third down and get out the field? And the answer is not enough. Are you pressuring the quarterback? And the answer is, again, not enough. They have 16 sacks in the season. They've only given up 9. But, you know, look at the teams that are the worst teams in the league, and what does that tell you? The teams that pressure the worst, pressure the quarterback the worst. Jaguars, the Raiders, the Titans, the Panthers. The Titans are one of the interesting ones. The Patriots, the Jets, and it seems to be catching up to the Titans. So, you know, I think the offense has helped propping up the defense, and it's out by design in that the offense is supposed to get a lead and then allow the defense to pin their ears back. The problem is that no one is taking that bait of trying to throw the football time and again against the Packers. They're just going to run it and run it and run it, and they seem to be running it down people's throat. Remember, when they lost to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, it wasn't because of Tom Brady. He wasn't anything special. It was the turnovers, and then Tampa ran the football. Kirk Cousins, not special. Jimmy Garoppolo last year, not special. Jimmy Garoppolo threw the ball 8 times in the NFC Championship game. Didn't have to. Why? Raheem Mostert. It's the same thing. And we're chasing after kind of the wrong things. We do that. We do that in life all the time. Heck, we do that with politics. Right? You're chasing after the wrong things. You're worrying about something that does not pertain to you at all. But you follow kind of, you take the political bait, if you will. This is the same thing with the Green Bay Packers. Don't take the bait. It ain't about adding a wide receiver. Does that help? Sure, it doesn't hurt. You know, if you're going to plan on being behind and throw the ball all the time, then yeah. Keep in mind they didn't have Aaron Jones yesterday, right? You know, he's been banged up. It doesn't allow them to control the clock. He's their best running back. By the way, it was smart for them to draft an A.J. Dillon in the second round. They know they're going to need, Aaron Jones is going to want a lot of money. Plus, running backs aren't healthy the whole year. Perfect example. But they're not the best team in football this year, not because their quarterback play, not because they're wide receivers. Maybe not even because their offensive lines, because their defense stinks.